Hello and welcome to Counterpressed on The Ringer and Spotify. I'm in the studio with Jessy Humphreys and Becky Taylor-Gill. On today's show, we round up the last night of league phase action in the Champions League. We talk about how the English teams got on, who got through, who got knocked out, and who made it through to the quarterfinals. Wow, guys. Disney Goals Show moved me last night. I've been waiting for something like that.
They were non-stop bantering.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch it because Disney's worked out that I'm not in the same household as my stepdad who has the account.
Oh, I didn't think Disney was like that. Because I'm using Holly's brother's account.
Well, it might ask you at some point.
Yeah, well, I can't have it on my laptop because it's keeps asking me to put in the password and it sends and does something to his email, so it's getting way too complicated. But I have got it on the TV and my phone. But I cancelled my Disney a while ago because I just had 6,000 subscriptions. But I enjoyed the fact for the first time throughout this whole season of coverage, we actually got a bit of a narrative and a conversation about what was going on. Because I think the issue with some of this Disney coverage is you get parachuted into a game.
Was the goal show as good as the WSL goal show?
You mean the multi-view?
It was
good.
I thought it was good. I thought it was almost better than WSL multi-view because...
Well, you had the studio.
Obviously, let our bestie hear you say that.
Well,
Sue was commentating, so there was still Sue Smith content.
Great.
Don't worry.
Okay.
No, but I think obviously with the WSL multi-view, you don't have like the studio to ground you. You have Sue and other.
Oh, they had a studio too.
Yeah, so this was leaning
they
actually.
were proper set up.
It was quite like
Alex,
CBS.
Leanne, Nadem of this parish and Farah.
Okay, that is good.
Yeah, and they were trying to do a bit of a CBS of like bantering.
It felt very CBS-y.
Yeah,
but it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then Ben Haynes was sort of doing the linking between all the goals. It was kind of giving Pointless the way he was sort of standing at his desk as the sort of like, or like, you know, when there's person at the desk for Countdown who sort of does the little, you know, interesting factoids. He sort of had that role. So he was just doing the narrative during the actual games and would go between goals. The only thing I did miss out is I decided, I think partly related to the fact that I'm on someone else's Disney Plus, I decided not to watch a full game. So I felt like I did miss out on getting the overall context. Because if you have multi-view, you do have all the games going.
It's so hard to know what's going on in any game. I feel like when I try and watch 2 football matches at once, I actually don't watch any of either of them.
I think you made the right call, Jessy, because you had Goal Show on your phone and then the Chelsea game on the big telly.
Yes.
That's smart.
And
That's the smart option.
I was like, obviously I want to watch Chelsea for obvious reasons, but I was kind of like, there were obviously so many different permutations, but I was like, this is quite an interesting one. Like, Chelsea have to win to get top 4. If they don't win, the chances are they won't get top 4. And I was like, okay, this is a good narrative to lock in on. And then, Goal Show. The only thing that was like bugging me out a little bit was when they went to the Chelsea game on the Goal Show, like my eye would be drawn and I'd be like, oh, Chelsea got a chance, and it'd be like the chance I'd watched 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if it happened different this time.
And I was like,
well, let's get into it then. Let's talk about what happened last night in the last round of games in the league phase. The league phase has been fun, actually, overall.
Although a disappointing final evening, I thought.
Yeah, well, the permutation stuff there was so much going on. And I guess the other element, the added element of the permutations factor was also around seeding. So we already had quite a few teams that we already knew had qualified to the knockout phase, but it was to be determined who was going to get those quarter-final buys, if you like, and who was going to be doing the playoffs. But then also there was this added element of where you finish is also going to dictate your seeding. So I suppose that was another thing to kind of keep an eye on, but also a bit of added complication to kind of get your head round. And then there was only the ones at the bottom who were sort of like, ooh,
I think it just felt like games didn't really move.
Like, I think the stakes weren't high enough.
Also,
I think the stakes were
teams
high
scored
enough,
early.
but, yeah.
Bayern scored early. Arsenal
I
scored
don't think the
early.
stakes were, at least for like things that, like the stakes were high for those teams, for themselves and what they want to achieve. But like for a viewer, I don't think the stakes were very high because I don't think there was any teams where you're like, if PSG had like maybe won a game at any point and it was like, ooh, they could They could not make it. Not
I guess
qualify
I
at
just
all,
feel
and-
like the bye to the quarterfinal is so important.
Yeah.
And so I think that did feel like if you're
I think-
Juventus, I think you're probably
if-
like, how
if-
did we fuck
I-
that up?
But I think if you're a fan of those teams, yes, that feels really important. As a neutral, that feels like not an interesting thing for like, yeah, cool. Like I'm happy for you personally.
Thank you.
That Chelsea got a bye to the quarterfinal. But as a neutral, I don't think that makes the stakes high enough. I want to see like, oh, someone's gonna get relegated. Well,
That would be
not
strange
qualify.
because there's no second division.
I
Not
suppose
qualify, but you know what I mean.
it wasn't as good as what we've seen in the men's league phase, where we've seen really dramatic dropouts on that final day. The only good thing I will say is normally we'd get to the last round of games in the group stage and there would be nothing on the
Yeah.
table. But because of the quarterfinal, because of the seeding thing, there was still some
But I think
narrative.
I think it is like what you were saying about teams scoring early, and I think Chelsea were the only team who like came back within a game. And I think if you'd had more, like say Juve Manchester United had been like, Juve had gone ahead and then Manchester United scored 2, that I think that would have felt more because you'd have felt the table moving.
Yeah,
And as
I
much
thought
as like it
didn't
did
that
move a
much.
little bit of it didn't really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just run through what the top four looked like before the game started. So Barca top, Lyon second, Chelsea third, Juve fourth. And then come the final whistle, Barca top, Lyon second, Chelsea third, Bayern huge
Wow.
squeezed
Huge.
in. Bayern with a really good performance, and they kind of got the job done early, winning 3-0. And Manchester United, who deserve a lot of credit actually for that win last night, beating Juve 1-0. So just in the interest of kind of wrapping it all up, I'll go through the teams that have gone through the quarterfinals. So obviously I just mentioned Barca, Lyon, Chelsea, Bayern. They go straight through to the quarterfinals. And then the teams who have dropped out entirely, Vålerenga, Roma, Twente, Benfica, PSG, and St. Polten. Twente, actually, they were leading 1-0 against Real Madrid, who had the chance of going through the quarterfinal, slightly bottled it. Real Madrid had tons of chances, early goal that was ruled out by VAR. Twente go 1-0 up, and then Real Madrid concede in stoppage time. Twente wouldn't have made it in because they still would have finished on 5 points and been just behind Leuven. But it was a very dramatic, fun final game for them. Yeah, and then when we look at what the rest of the table looks like in terms of knockouts, you've got Arsenal in 5th, Manchester United in 6th, Real Madrid 7th, Juventus 8th, Wolfsburg 9th, Paris FC 10th, Atletico Madrid 11th, and Leuven in 12th.
That Juve
that from
drop
them.
is crazy.
Yeah.
4th to 8th.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's like pretty brutal.
And hey, I think Leuven deserves some credit
Yeah.
for
Some
sneaking
love.
in there.
Can I just
some
say,
Leuven love?
I feel smug because after 2 game weeks, I said, I think they were on 4 points, and I was like, they basically got, that's so many points on the board already. I reckon they'll get through.
That's so many points. They've done it.
Yeah.
Jessy, I want to talk to you about Chelsea Wolfsburg because it was a very important win for Chelsea because it did exercise a lot of Wolfsburg demons, not only from the famous diarrhea game many years ago, but in general, Wolfsburg have been a really tough opponent for Chelsea.
Although, of course, we did beat them on our route to the Champions League final the one
Yeah.
time we went to the Champions League final, so yes.
Yeah,
But yes.
But what happened
But
in the
at
Champions
home.
League final?
Well, that's a different team who we also have demons with.
So there are lots of demons circling around this team. And also, Chelsea went 1-0 down in this game. So that created even more, oh God, oh God, oh God, energy around it. Great goal from Pop. And
You could say the ball really popped up for her.
but I want to talk about a lot of Chelsea panic that I was seeing on the timeline last night. And to get your thoughts on whether it's justified panic, whether it's, overblown. What do you think? Because in that first 45, when Chelsea were 1-0 down and they were creating and missing quite a few chances, there was a lot of stress on my Chelsea timeline, a lot of frustration about the setup that Bon Pastor had picked, the team that she'd started. Then she did make some really important changes. Miguel Nusken, who I've been crying out for, made a big difference. And they swung the game back in their favour. Sam Kerr with a kind of very Curryan finish header. But do you think some of that hysteria was justified last night?
I mean, I understand it. Like, in these games where you feel like, well, you know, as we've said, Chelsea were a team who had their like fortunes in their own hands. I do really think skipping out that home and away leg is really important. Getting to go straight to the quarterfinals, and obviously there's this kind of fear factor from obviously when we lost 4-0 to Wolfsburg on the final day of the Champions League group stages 4 years ago. So, like, I understand why people are freaking out, because also, you know, this is a Wolfsburg team who last week lost to a Real Madrid side who ended up with 9 players. So, you know, I think there was a feeling that this was a team who Chelsea should be able to beat. I think also maybe there's that, like, sense of frustration that, like, we drew with 20 earlier in the league phase, and again, like, feeling like you've left points on the board and now there's this extra pressure on. Chelsea did start poorly. They looked nervy, and I think there's a difference between getting your team selection wrong and like having to adjust your team selection for the game that is then in front of you. I feel like with Lauren James coming back, I understand why, and this was like the main point of contention, right? That Chelsea are playing a midfield of Walsh, Cuthbert and LJ. And I think it was quite clear, especially when Nuskin came on for LJ at half-time, that Chelsea needed like a more robust midfield. And if they had a more robust midfield, they were going to be able to put Wolfsburg under loads of pressure. I will say, regardless of that, Chelsea could have been 3-1 up at half-time. Sam Kerr misses an open goal, basically, when the ball kind of like bounces off her tummy. LJ goes through on goal and like should score. So for all of like that, Chelsea didn't really look in control of the game. They were still creating a lot against Wolfsburg. So I feel like that also puts a little bit paid to the idea that this was like a total bust in terms of like setup and performance. The problem was that it was just a very up and down game, which continued throughout the 90 minutes. I think sometimes you have to like take into account, you know, the scenario. There was a lot of chat about how, you know, Wolfsburg, this was like within the broadcast, about how, and I think Stefan Lurch had said it before, and that's why it kept coming up, that they could sort of like play without pressure, play without fear. But like Wolfsburg had a lot riding on this game. Like they, if results went their way, could have finished I think they were in the top 4 at one point, and because they lost, they've ended up finishing in 9th. That's a massive difference in terms of the quarterfinal spots, the seeding. So I think sometimes like chaos can like slip into these games sort of regardless. But yeah, Chelsea did eventually, I think the changes were really good. I think it was good to be proactive. Nuskin came on, she was absolutely brilliant. I think not only from a tactical perspective, like just from her own individual level. Cannerid replaced Ellie Carpenter at about 53 minutes, and again I think that really helped Chelsea like put on like even more attacking pressure with Cannerid playing in that sort of wing back area. She obviously creates the goal that Kerr scores. Kerr does what Kerr does in that she misses a load of like really good chances and then just finds that moment where she like executes it. And then Chelsea had to hang on, and they got away with some scary moments in what ended up being quite a bitty finish. There was the bizarre moment where Thompson and Cuthbert run into each other and they're like literally playing over Erin Cuthbert because the ref didn't stop the game.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Lucy Bronze got smacked in the face, so that with the ball, so that also stopped the game. And I think that like kind of stopped those sort of chaotic bits, which are just sort of a bit random. They stopped Chelsea from being able to slow the game down, and that meant that Wolfsburg did get a couple of chances towards the end. But yeah, I think sometimes you've just got to like get out there and win. And as you know, everyone knows Chelsea have not done that before in Wolfsburg. So I think to come away with the result is ultimately the most important thing.
Do you think it's added just because of the defeat to Everton? Do you think there's this sort of like added slight stress in the air at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it increases the pressure on the Champions League, because I think if people, I mean, there's pressure on the Champions League every time, right? But like, I feel like with being 6 points behind in the WSL, kind of as a result of the Everton defeat, but also like other poor results, the Liverpool result, it makes people want the Champions League more, because I think you're kind of like, well, maybe we should not be thinking about that. I mean, it is kind of funny. The league position, I think, we will have a better sense of that come the end of January, because Chelsea will play Arsenal and they'll play City. And it's entirely possible that Chelsea are like 3 points behind City at that point if they win the Arsenal game and they beat City. That might be too big an ask given where this team is right now, but like I think it shows how quickly things can change. But equally, come January, they could be 9, 11, 12 points behind City. So I think January will be kind of the moment where it becomes really obvious what Chelsea need to focus on. But generally, this has been the funny thing about the Champions League. Like, Chelsea have performed much better, and even like if you take all those 6 games in total, Chelsea's XG is the highest in the league. Chelsea's XG against is the highest in the league, or like is the best in the league. So I think overall across the 6 games, Chelsea have shown themselves to perform really well. Also crazy, not lost a Champions League group stage game since that 4-0 against Wolfsburg.
Wow.
What do you think is, like, from right now, what is a successful season for Chelsea?
I don't know. It's so hard. It's hard because the standards are like crazy. I think you have to win something. I think Chelsea you always have to go and win something.
But does the FA Cup feel like enough?
Well, it won't because of how much they always win. But I don't think that's necessarily fair, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's
At what
like
point,
this weird
like
thing.
what's gonna is winning the FA Cup gonna keep you from a head loss if that's all you win, or are you gonna be noggin boiled?
I guess depends what
I
happens
think
in
it
the Champions
depends,
League.
Yeah, I kind of think I feel like maybe reaching the Champions League final is like the mark of success. I think that would be a big thing.
It's kind of crazy how long it's been since you did.
It's because we have to play Barcelona every year.
Yeah.
Well, the luck of the draw means it won't be until the semi-finals, but
That's when we play them every year.
quick word on Arsenal as well, because they got the job early. They got the job done early against Leuven. First Champions League goal for Olivia Smith, and also a massive away following. 1,000 travelling fans. I think there was a small who were local Arsenal fans, but 1,000 away fans in total. We were hearing from Tim about how good the Leuven Christmas markets are, so that was an extra attraction.
Fun.
So that is a great away day opportunity.
I love a last Champions League match away day before Christmas.
Yeah.
I did that Amsterdam a few years ago and it was so nice.
So I'm sure they all had a lovely time. But again, I mean, massive props to them and everyone kind of involved in building that fan culture at the moment, because a lot of teams in the men's Europa and Champions League would be impressed with that sort of away following for a European midweek. So yeah, and the atmosphere was great. I think it was I know there's one more game because we've got the League Cup games this weekend, but I think for Arsenal there's been some more positive energy about these last few performances, and I think last night kind of helped build that a little bit. And I know it was interesting, someone pointed out the conversation on the Goal Show before the game started about how many players are out of contract, and a few people on Twitter were kind of making a joke about, are some of these players now playing for a new deal, knowing that there are things coming up on the horizon. But Jessy, I think that there was something that felt more positive about Arsenal in these last couple of games than what we've seen in the previous few weeks.
Yeah, but isn't this a bit of Arsenal's problem? Because I'm like, yeah, they looked good against Leuven. They looked good against Everton. They played well against Fenty, but without having a convincing result. And I think they got a little bit lucky against Liverpool. So if that's the last 4, I'm like, I wouldn't say any of those 4 teams are like world beaters.
Okay, rude. You regret that on Sunday.
And I don't know if they've been convincing across all 4. But this feels like the nature of this Arsenal team, that everything's sort of everything always hangs on the last result. It's like, it's chaos if the last result wasn't very good. It's amazing if the last result was good. I don't know how much we can take from this. I don't think Leuven are a bad side by any means, and yeah, it was a convincing win. And I mean, for Arsenal to sort of finish where they did in the league table, given their sort of start to the season, that's, I guess, exactly, that's like kind of the best they could have ended up doing. But
finishing 5th overall is pretty decent given
I think
the weird ride it's been.
We were just talking about Chelsea expectations, and we obviously also talked about sort of Arsenal expectations with Tim last Thursday. But I think this is, again, this funny thing with Arsenal. On the one hand, I'm like, well, as Tim said, I don't think anyone was under illusions that they were the best team in Europe when they won the Champions League. But at the same time, they're the Champions League holders. So I feel like we maybe should hold them to higher expectations. And I think that tension is like what's making it hard for me to like assess their league phase as a whole, because I'm like, well, they lost to both their pot 1 sides, which is like ultimately kind of what matters.
My point would be we
Champions
should,
League.
but we know we can't because they're not as good as some of these teams. Like in a one-off game, yes, they've proved that they can beat anyone, but we know that when you...
But I kind of feel, and this is just me being rattled, and I know this, but if I have to hear about them being Champions League winners all the time, then I should hold them to the standard of being Champions League winners.
Yeah, there's just like no way that I think any of us were like, yes, they're going to get in one of those top 4 spots. But if like...
Well,
But
no, if Chelsea
could
won the
have done,
Champions
you know,
League last year, that would have been the expectation, right?
That's exactly what I mean. I don't mean that like it's impossible that they could have. I just mean that at least personally, my expectation was not that they would get into one of those top 4 spots.
I thought they should have beat Bayern. I expected them to lose against Lyon, but they should have beat Bayern.
The expectation for Chelsea is always that they will get in that top 4, and especially if you'd have won it the year before, I would have like sky high expectations. Whereas like Arsenal won the Champions League, it gagged. Who thought that was coming? Like none of us went into that final thinking that Arsenal were going to be champions.
If they'd beaten Bayern, they would have comfortably in the top 4 because they would have 15 points. And they would have been...
Yeah, but if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a guy.
No, but what I mean is they weren't miles. Like when I looked at their draw, I thought they lose the game against Lyon. But really, I think the expectation should be, and this is why I think there needs to be maybe like that added pressure on them. Because then the expectation was they should finish top 4.
Yeah, I agree.
But none of us. But this is all hypothetical because none of us did have that expectation. That's what we're talking about.
I don't know. I did.
I thought they would finish top 4.
I thought they would finish top 4.
Yeah.
I didn't. I don't back them.
Because also I think Bayern are in a bit of a false position in that I think that I've seen some really good Bayern performances and some really stinky Bayern performances, and that 4th slot was the one for me that was most up for grabs. I think Barcelona, Lyon, Chelsea, they're almost a given. I think that 4th spot was wide open, and for me that should have been Arsenal.
Yeah, I agree.
And then quick word on Manchester United, their first time in the Champions League, finished with 12 points from 6 games. Obviously, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, front-loaded their results, but on the kind of, if you look at the sort of basis of all of their performances and their results, being PSG, we know that they were complete Stinksville, but being PSG was a big moment for them, and also that win against Juve last night was also very important. So I think they deserve, and Skinner deserves a lot of credit for how they've navigated and this first time in the Champions League. And with all the noise about a very busy January window, we obviously wait to see what happens in the draw today. We're not annoyingly going to be able to talk about it because it's happening later today. It's going to be really interesting how they do in the playoffs.
I think they've done so well. I think you kind of forget that it's their first Champions League because obviously they've kind of been around and they've been in the qualifiers in the past. But I think we have like big expectations on English teams and WSL teams. But if that had been a team from like any other of the top leagues, any new team coming in, I think you'd have not really backed them to do that well. But they've done so well. And I think they were obviously quite lucky that they had like their matches early that they were like, we can win this. I think that's given them such a huge advantage to front loading those matches and being like and putting themselves in a really good position. But I do just think they need all the credit because where did they finish? 6th?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I think for so many teams, you have to work out who the teams you should be beating. That's all based on the pots, right? And Manchester United kind of navigated theirs perfectly in that they lost to Lyon, which was definitely their hardest game. The Wolfsburg result probably frustrating because they could have done better there. But overall, they beat the teams they needed to beat and the teams that were lower ranked with them, and then they got that win against PSG, and that kind of made sure that they were in a comfortable position.
Hypothetical, Jessy, how rattled would you be if
Manchester
United won
United.
the Champions League?
That would be iconic. I back
Sorry,
that.
that would be so
I'd back
funny.
that.
I would obviously be fuming because I don't want them to win anything. But
I'd love that.
Do you think that would be really funny? And also, I think they might charm me if they did make a run because they really charmed me in the World Sevens against my will. I was like, damn it.
That would be so funny. If
It
that
would be.
happened.
I'm sorry. I don't know what would happen to you. I think your
I don't
noggin
know.
might explode.
I think it would, but I think the Arsenal thing just already rattled me so much. I don't know how much more rattle I have left.
I think you have rattled
Do
that.
you think?
Yeah. knowing
Actually,
you.
anyone who saw me watching Chelsea Wolfsburg last night knows how much rattle I have to give. No, but I think also with the United thing, I think United deserve a lot of credit, but I think also we can do some pro-English stuff right now, which I'm sure loads of people will take really, really well. But for a long time, the WSL, I think, kind of was seen as a sort of a bit of a joke in terms of it was like made out to be this like great competitive league, but then everyone would kind of like bottle it when it came to playing in Europe. That Chelsea would be the only team that would like consistently reach latter stages, and then even then they'd have these like big blowout moments, Barcelona, Wolfsburg, etc. Whereas now we're in a position where the past 2 seasons, all 3 English teams have made it to the knockout stages. That's come in situations where, that's been United this year, City last year, Arsenal obviously went on to win. We had 2 English teams in the semi-finals last year, and, who knows what would have happened if Chelsea and City hadn't had to play each other in the quarterfinals. So I think, part of United, I feel like United, they dealt really well with everything, but I think that you can also say they were well prepared by the league that they've been playing in. And I think in the past, maybe teams, or when you're talking about as well, like teams from other countries coming in, that maybe sort of the like variety of style and the level means that it's very hard then when you're coming up against that. Whereas I think what the WSL it has moved towards in the past couple of years is more teams wanting to play different ways. So like you might get teams like, say, a Leicester who are just going to like sit behind the ball and try and kind of play transition football. But then you're also going to get a team like Everton who maybe like they're not doing it at as high a level as you would get in Europe, but like they're still trying to play possession football, and that like makes you, I think, learn and adapt tactically in a way that I feel like has really benefited all the English teams in Europe. And I don't know if like this is the start of the trend. I feel like two seasons is like probably too small a sample size, although you can also obviously look at Arsenal and Chelsea's previous semi-final run as well. It does really feel like English sides are starting to really understand like how to play these games and how to play in this competition.
Yeah, and I will add as well, I know there's so much talk about the lack of depth in some capacity of Skinner's squad, but the recruitment specifically for the Champions League has really worked. You see that with Jess Park and how influential she's been, not just in the WSL but in Europe too, and Freeland Rolfer, who the main purpose of her signing was for that experience of playing in Europe, and she's shown that so much in the way that she's featured for them this season. Yes, they still need to recruit and add more, but there's some really exciting names that they're linked with, and they bring that in. I think they should finish the season strongly. And even if they, say, make it to the quarterfinals and then get knocked out, like you say, Jessy, that's still more learning for them next season. They've obviously then got to make sure they qualify for Europe again, because it's going to be really competitive for that top 3. But yeah, I mean, WSL superiority lives on.
We love to see it.
We love to see it. So yes, the draw is happening today, Thursday, 12 p.m. UK, 1 p.m. European time. We have to say a blessing that we're getting the draw 24 hours after the game's end. Do you remember when we had to wait till basically February?
Yeah, that was so weird.
Really weird.
This is a
annoying
weird
to not
draw
book
though,
anything.
because you can kind of sort of figure out who everyone's getting.
Yeah, so...
Or like there's
the
50-50
quarterfinal as well,
chance.
yeah.
So it's like there's like a very strong chance
Like-
Chelsea will get either Arsenal or United, because
Yeah.
in third they will play the winners of 5th, 6th versus 11th, 12th.
Okay.
Yeah,
kind of
so
thing.
everyone is seeded into pairs, and then you get drawn based on the seeding of the other pairs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not the most...
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, so we're now... It's all going to be a bracket, and depending where you finish in the table, that's your seed, but then you can only be drawn against certain other seeds and where they finished.
The thought of a
So-
Chelsea-Arsenal quarter-final is making me want
Well, also,
to
yeah, because
leave
English
this
teams
country.
can be drawn against each other from the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
it's just like, sorry, I've had enough of watching Chelsea play Arsenal.
But
I've had enough of it.
I don't think... Have Chelsea-Arsenal ever been a Champions League fixture?
I don't know, but just in general.
don't
No,
think
I love
so.
it.
FA Cup,
No, sorry.
League Cup.
Chelsea,
I'm done.
Chelsea
I'm over
Arsenal
it.
is box office, and we need it for the sake
I'm over
of
it.
just interest,
No, it's
entertainment.
like-
it always delivers. It always delivers.
when
guys.
it was like maybe Chelsea, Arsenal Champions League final. The prospect of going all the way to Lisbon to just watch a WSL game.
This is
I was
different. If it's
rattled.
a quarter-final,
2 legs.
yeah.
one at the Emirates, one at Stamford
Oh, that
Bridge.
okay.
Come
You've got me.
on.
That is fun.
It's
That's
so
fun.
fun. Stamford Bridge buffet, Emirates buffet. Come on. So draws happening today. Teams that finish in 5th and 6th will face either the team finishing 11th or 12th, while the 7th or 8th are drawn against the 9th or 10th. I'm sure our favourite Nadine Kessler will explain this
She'll be there.
perfectly later on today. So, yeah, sadly, we can't report on the draw, annoyingly, but we'll be keeping an eye out for who everyone gets. We're going to talk now who we've been impressed with and who has flopped next. Okay, so I thought we'd round up the league phase by saying a team and a player we've been most impressed with and a team that we think has flopped massively. So I'll start with who I've been impressed with. I'm going to take out Barcelona and Lyon because I just feel like...
No, they haven't been impressive.
Exactly.
That's just their
They've just done
expectation.
what they always do, right? It's almost like the Champions League exists with everyone else and then Barcelona and Lyon in their own little world
It's
doing
kind of
their
crazy
own
because
little
I
thing.
really thought Leon would like drop off but they just keep coming back.
Well, I think that's... I mean, I don't love her, obviously, but I
Michelle
think that's the
Kang
Kang
effect.
effect. I think they would have... I think if that hadn't happened, they
Yeah.
would have continued to... They would have dropped off, yeah.
So I'm taking them out of the equation and I'm going to put in a team who have frustrated and impressed me in equal measure. And I mentioned it just earlier. But I'm going to give some flowers to Bayern Munich. They have annoyed me in some of their performances. But I think the way that they got the job done on the final night, the way that they secured a quarterfinal spot was impressive. And I'm going to give them some love. And I think a lot will depend on what their draw looks like. But I'm going to give some love to Bayern Munich.
It's kind of been funny because they sort of were touching on this on the goal show last night. But I think across the whole league phase, it feels like this has been sort of the league phase of the golden oldies. Because Frida Rolfo's obviously been great for United. I think Pernilla Harder's hauled Bayern Munich through some moments.
She did miss the sitter yesterday, but yeah.
Yeah, but she did also score. But and
Yeah.
also I feel like the Arsenal comeback was very Harder influenced.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
probably the crucial moment for them across this whole thing. Lucy Bronze basically put Chelsea on her back last night, apart from the one terrible pass she did.
Let her have it.
One bad pass.
No, but it was horrendous. So I feel like that's been quite a fun kind
I
of
think you're
theme
right.
of sort of the vets,
Yeah.
you know, like taking teams through.
And Arsenal squad, most of them now are 30 or older. Beth Mead scored another screamer last night. So I agree with you, Jessy, which kind of then defaults my next player-specific one because I've picked a young player. But first, tell me about the team that you've been most impressed with?
I definitely think United deserve props. I would have said Juve until last night.
Yeah.
But even then, I still think, I think last night was a close game and it probably could have gone either way. I don't really think Juve, bottled it. I think United and Juve are probably about a similar level. And I think both teams sort of had a couple of chances, but it wasn't like a real end-to-end game. But I do think, Juve are a team who we sort of had seen kind of like making waves in the Champions League, and then it felt like they were falling away and that Roma were going to be like the big Italian team, and obviously they've gone out in the league phase. No, I'm talking myself into Juve. But it's hard because then they actually kind of finish ninth. This is the thing when it's like so tight that it's hard. But I do think for Juve to have even been in fourth before the final day, that's something that I don't think anyone would have predicted.
If they'd finished there, I would have been.
And I think having a narrow loss to United, even though it heavily affected their league position, I don't think that's kind of like the end of the world. And I personally, if I was in those 7th or 8th slots, would definitely wouldn't be feeling great about facing them.
Given how Juve performed previously in the group stages, I think this was real progression.
Yeah. I feel like also with Juve, the going 3-0 against Lyon is like, that bit was amazing. And then obviously they sort of bottled that game. So maybe Juve are like a Schrodinger's, were they good or not team.
It is mad about thinking if they'd won that game.
It's funny because I was kind of getting rattled about Chelsea being in third and obviously like the 20 result affecting that, but I've decided I'm actually, instead of blaming my donkeys, going to blame Juventus because Lyon would have had less points if they hadn't had that happen. Oh, but I also want to mention Leuven.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Leuven. I just think to come in, and we said the same about United coming in as like first timers, but they obviously, you look at that team, you think they're not. That's one of those teams where you're like, they're going to get beaten by everybody, they're going to have a nice time, and then they're going to go home. But to be the first Belgian team to make it to the knockouts is just such a huge achievement that I think, they get my flowers today.
It is funny that they could end up having Arsenal, and they did a post-match with one of the Leuven players, and she was basically like, we don't want to play Arsenal again because we've already played them now. So can we have something different?
Yeah, we want something fun.
Fair. And then my player, I am really on this Bayern hype at the moment. Momoko Tanikawa at Bayern.
Great goal last night.
2 goals in Champions League. 20-year-old midfielder. She is getting a lot of love in Europe at the moment and is definitely a one to watch. And we put her on the cutback for our Bundesliga one to watch list. So, plug.
I must also plug, it's irrelevant now, but I did enjoy Max Radwan's permutations list. That was very helpful last night.
God, Max Radwan's permutations list, bless him. I was editing it I don't even know what's going on here.
I'm sure it's right.
Because of the seeded stuff, it was just so complicated. But I think she's a player that I'm really excited to watch. And obviously we know at the moment, if we think about on-trend players across European football, the Japanese talent and development is just off the scale at the moment across all of Europe. So I think when you're looking at who's the next gem, and obviously she's playing at Bayern, she's already playing at high level, but you always think, will they be moving again to maybe a top WSL team or to one of the like Lyon or Barcelona or wherever? Yeah, she's been making waves for me so far. Anyone you want to give love to?
I will do an honourable mention for Clara Bull, who absolutely cannot stop assisting goals and has an unfathomable number of assists already this season. But for me, it's Melchi Dumonet. I just think...
Sorry. She's mine.
I just think, for me, best player in Europe so far this season, she just looks totally unreal. Her goals get a lot of attention, but watching her play IRL against Arsenal in that first round of fixtures, I just thought her movement, the way she looks on the ball, everything about her is just so fantastic. And in a Lyon team that has a lot of stars, it says a lot that she still feels like a level above those players.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I think Nedum last night was doing some analysis on her, and he was kind of focusing on the way that she can slow the game and speed up at the same time. And obviously her finishing is ridiculous, but the way she can manipulate the ball as well as her movement, she's impossible to defend against, because even if you feel like you know what she's going to do, she can move the ball so quickly. She can change her angles. She can change pace. She can get past you so quickly. It's kind of impossible to play against. And yeah, she's one of the most exciting players in the Champions League, for sure, for sure. Okay, flops. I feel like there's a lot to choose from.
I was just like, flops? Like, Twitter flops?
Teams that have flopped, I mean,
Come
hands
on.
down PSG.
Yeah,
There's
obviously.
just simply no other correct
Central.
answer. Like, how are we that bad?
But I also will throw some extra flopdom on Roma.
Yeah, that's also...
Because they got their first win of the Champions League last night when it didn't matter at all. They have been kind of hipster's choice vibes over the last couple of seasons and been really impressive. I mean, lest we forget that game when they defended for their lives but put in a really good performance against Barcelona. That feels like a distant memory. They should have fancied themselves as a team to get through to the knockouts, and the fact that they finish with one win Stinksville.
It's real stinky down there.
Yeah, they had 1 point going into the final game.
Actually, if you're Mary Ups right now, your noggin must be so boiled.
I'm sad we're missing out on the Mary Ups Hannah Hampton grudge match. That would have been fun.
But it's just
PSG had gone
she
through.
must be rattled to high heaven to have moved essentially just to be able to play in Champions League, finished with 0 wins.
PSG
0 wins. And have your
and they
former
didn't
team,
even qualify last season.
Yeah.
She went there and they didn't make it to our qualification.
and have your former team have a really,
Be in the
really good
knockouts.
campaign so far. It's just real poor decision making.
I agree with Rome and PSG. I was joking last night. I would say Arsenal. I feel like I was being a bit silly, but we've kind of already touched on it. But I do think it is a little bit of a and
It's not a full flop. It's like a
belly flop.
Half trip.
Yeah, they fell
It's
up
a
the
stumble.
stairs.
It's a stumble.
They stumbled up the stairs, but like they managed to right themselves and get to the top of the stairs. But it's like we all noticed that they did it.
Yeah, we all saw.
Yeah.
And we're all embarrassed.
Yeah, very true.
We're all snickering behind the back.
Jessy, who would be your dream draw for quarterfinal?
Anyone that's not Arsenal? What, like for Chelsea?
Yeah. Who would be your ideal
Well, obviously,
opponent?
what I'd like to happen is Leuven to beat one of Arsenal, Manchester United, and then us to play Leuven.
Dream on. Not happening.
Well, you asked me what my dream. I am dreaming on. That was the point of the question.
Sorry, I didn't set you up there. Okay, well, that's enough Champions League chat. We're going to be back on Monday for the Christmas quiz. We return for another year of shenanigans. So
I'm gonna
make
get
sure
my first win.
make sure you tune in for that. And of course, a quick plug for our social channels. If you don't already follow Counterpressed on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, lots of fun on there. Obviously watch us on YouTube and subscribe on YouTube. And also, it's been a while, but rate and review on Spotify and Apple Pod. We're getting it all in before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Rate and review
Housekeeping.
on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Leave us some nice comments and
Tell us we're pretty.
and come
Tell us we're
and
smart.
give us a little Christmas treat. And see you on Monday for a special edition of the Christmas quiz.